After the relative commercial success of Dragon Quest II, Hori and Nakamura reflected on how they felt about the game. To reiterate from last time, they're happy that the game did well, but in a 1989 interview, Koichi Nakamura confessed that they were only able to accomplish half of what they wanted to with the sequel. Just to vindicate myself a little bit here, Nakamura was quoted in the interview saying, "I feel pretty good about Dragon Quest II up until you get the boat. After that, I don't like the game very much. The difficulty balance with the monsters, fell short of my aspirations." Even Yuji Hori himself says that he only had enough time to play up until you got the boat, admitting that the content was a bit thin up until you get to Roan. Now compare this to what Hori says about the third game. But for Dragon Quest III, we were able to spend a lot of time fine-tuning many different sections. Take the dungeons, for instance. We ended up revising about 70% of what was in our first draft. Almost all of the details got updated and changed around during development. I really feel confident saying that Dragon Quest III is perfect. Perfect. Okay. Now, this is the game that most people start to point to when speaking on the series' real starting points. But personally, I'm just ready for a game where I don't have to look anything up just to go from start to finish. Japan was graced with Dragon Quest III on February 10th, 1988, roughly a year after the previous game's release. A year is quite the increase in development time when compared to the 7-month dev cycle that Dragon Quest II had. Will it make a difference? I think it's safe to say it will. If the man himself is using words like perfect to describe the thing, I think we're in for a good time. Let's conclude the Erdrick trilogy for ourselves though, by experiencing Dragon Quest III.
Wake up, Ross! It's morning! Today is a very important day. This is the first time that you, Ross, shall go to the castle.
Why did she say that like a skinwalker? No one talks like that, Mom. You're freaking me out. On his 16th birthday, our hero is escorted to the castle of Aliahan by his mother. The hero then approaches the king, who has a very important message.
It is said that thy father Ortega met his end when he fell into a volcano's crater at the end of a battle. We do hereby accept your petition to follow in the footsteps of your brave father. Thy enemy shall be the archfiend Baramos.
The king of Aliahan then tells the hero that to defeat the vile archfiend, he needs to go down the block to the local pub to pick up some buddies. And then surprisingly, that's where the story kinda stops. The previous game had a section where, after getting the boat, the objective was to search and search for the crests, and then the story picked back up. Well, that's how this story plays out, except it starts as soon as you leave Aliahan Castle. You'll essentially be going from town to town in a linear order, solving issues as they come. A small walk from the castle, the party will stumble into the village of Reeve. Information in this town leads you to this cave where you get the thief's key from an old man. The thief's key will then give you access to an old man who says that a magic ball will allow access to the travel door. This will open up the way for you to advance to the next continent. Then later on you find a village whose population has come down with a case of the Eepies. Come to find out, the whole village has been cursed by goblins because they stole their dream ruby. So you find the hidden goblin town and ask for the ruby back to save the village. I'm skipping a lot of steps in these dilemmas, but only because there are so many of them. This is Dragon Quest III's structure, talking to every NPC you come across and committing what they say to memory. Then coming back after night falls because we have a day and night system now and we gotta do another sweep of the town, just to make sure that there aren't any nuggets of info given by one of the town's night owls. My notes for Dragon Quest III are much more comprehensive than the previous two games, but only because a lot of these notes are for me. Writing down town names, what NPCs say around certain locations, what these towns, castles, and villages are actually named. You're expected to internalize town names like never before. There are quests that will span multiple locations. Having to gather information from two separate places on the map, which will allow you to progress with the story, is a normal occurrence, especially by late game. I would explain more of these little episodes, but they aren't particularly interesting in a bubble, but I do have a few standouts. It's really cool that this vendor in Lancel has invisibility herbs for sale, and this other guy staring at a wall in Lancel tells me that I should take some to the castle of Eginbear. So I make my way there and walk into the castle.
Yokels aren't welcome here. No sword, no shield, no service.
So, in order to get past these prejudiced guards, I have to use the herb to turn invisible and sneak by. I love that there's a town that's completely deserted during the daytime. It's almost eerily dead. But then when you come back during the night, it all starts to make sense. The town is suddenly bustling, with people walking around, shops now open, and even a few skeletons. It's been a town full of undead. I appreciate the mystery of Jipang, where the citizens are terrified of this monster named Orochi that periodically takes a sacrifice. But these people also idolize their leader, Himiko. So you meet with her, and she's a f***ing racist too.
Are you the outlander called Ross? I despise outlanders.
But it turns out that's not the only kind of monster she is. Himiko is Orochi. So one thing leads to another, the party kills her, and most of the villagers react with the solitary,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The truth can finally be told. My child was really a daughter.
yeah, what? But then you have other morons who, oh, the Orochi turned into Himiko, how horrible. Dumbass. But these little episodes are awesome and 100 times better than any of the other riddles we've had to solve in the other games. It feels way more manageable and fun to put these location puzzles together and solve them every 30 or 40 minutes throughout a 13 to 14 hour long adventure. But this isn't a story, you know? It's an adventure, no doubt, but there isn't really a narrative thread connecting these episodes. Yeah, Barroga needs to be stopped because he's bad news for the world, but he has no presence in the world. He's mentioned so infrequently that it actively surprises me if an NPC makes an offhanded comment about how he's going to destroy the world. Hell yeah, bro, I'm worried too, but I don't feel like I'm in a time crunch because this entire kingdom and its king are all too obsessed with trying black pepper for the first time.
Ross, what are you doing?
The king of Portoga has never had this shit before. Are you kidding me?
This ultimately does lead to Dragon Quest III's story feeling really scattered. It doesn't have much of one beyond there's a big bad guy, you need to stop him. The way in which you find him to eventually stop him almost feels coincidental. Thinking back, Dragon Quest I and III have a very similar amount of consistent story. 3 obviously has more side stories to resolve, but in both games you hear precious little about their respective main villains throughout the adventure leading up to the final battle. Eventually, our hero finds this dude who tells the prophecy of 6 orbs that when gathered, allowed the user to travel anywhere without the need of a ship. In time, and throughout their many adventures, the party comes across all 6 orbs. And after offering each of them at the altar, the legendary Phoenix is born. The bird helps the party reach Barroga's castle on a secluded island. A hard battle is fought, but the party finally defeats the one responsible for the darkness in this land. Now back at Aliahan Castle, the king says,
Oh, Ross, you did well in defeating the archfiend Barroga. You are indeed a true son of Ortega. The whole country sings your praises, Ross. Everyone, hear me. Let us celebrate.
Just then, the ground begins to shake.
I am Soma, Master Archfiend who rules the Dark Realms. It is thy suffering that brings me joy.
Just when we think the story is about to end, Dragon Quest pulls its first second act. Instead of the game concluding after the first major threat, we now have a new threat to track down and destroy. Barroga was simply a pawn of the true villain, the Archfiend Zoma. And to get to him, the party jumps down a giant chasm that is opened up near the mountains of Necrogond, landing deep underground. Below the world they come from, they wander into a stranger's house and ask him where they are.
I haven't seen your faces here before. I know. You must have come from the upper worlds. This is the world of darkness, called Alefgard. The world of darkness, called Alefgard. Called Alefgard. Alefgard.
Hold up. Alefgard is where Dragon Quest 1 and 2 took place. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 took place in the world of darkness? This might not seem like a huge revelation, but let me assure you, I was seriously taken by surprise here. This is the kind of thing that makes a blind playthrough of these games so special. I got to feel exactly what someone back in the 80s felt following this series. After leaving this guy's house, the group commandeers a ship and sails to Tantagel Castle. I know we did this kind of thing in the last video too, but something about seeing this place before even the events of the first game is so cool. This kid says he's studying to lift curses. That's where the old man who lifts curses in the first game will be. Yeah, it's the old man in the corner. Hey, do the thing. This section of the game is very reminiscent of the run through the Kanto region in Pokemon Generation 2, where you essentially play through a version of the first game with content that's been trimmed down. The hero and his friends will visit locations from the first game and track down a selection of familiar items. The Stone of Sunlight, not off to the side of Tantagel Castle, but instead hidden away in the castle's kitchen of all places. The Staff of Rain, which can be traded for the Silver Harp in the shrine south of Cantlin. The Fairy Flute can be found 4 steps south of the Bath in Cold, just like before. Only this time, the Fairy Flute is used to awaken the good wizard Rubus. Rubus was mentioned last time in Dragon Quest II, but come to find out, this spirit created Alefgard. She gifts the hero with a sacred amulet, or as it will be later known, Erdrick's token, as well as the whereabouts of a legendary set of armor that the hero must use to defeat Zoma, and will eventually be known as Erdrick's equipment. After collecting all of the appropriate items, our heroes travel to the shrine south of Rimuldar, where an old sage combines the items into the Rainbow Drop. Using this, the fight can be taken straight to Zoma. Inside the castle, the party stumbles upon a battle already taking place.
Hey, that's my daddy!
The game enters a battle where Ortega takes on this King Hydra. It's really cool, but it certainly is going on a lot longer than you'd think, but yeah, neat. Oh no, he died! But in his dying breath, Ortega asks that these adventurers make their way back to Aliahan and ask Ross to forgive his father. Sure, I'll let him know. Guess I'll get the milk too, you deadbeat. But shortly after that, they come face to face with Zoma.
All living beings shall be demolished by me. The entire world shall sink into despair. Come, my servants, destroy them so that I may thrive on their suffering.
Zoma throws his servants at the party, similar to how Hargon had his generals in 2. Thankfully, these guys aren't nearly as tough as the generals in 2, but I digress.
Ross, why do you struggle to live? My joy is thy destruction, my beauty thy death. Come forward then, and die in peace.
After a grueling battle, the victor is decided. The hero prevails, ridding this world of its endless darkness. After another fissure swallows the party, they're spat out back on the surface as day breaks in the land of darkness. The party takes a victory stroll all the way to Tantagel Castle as a reprisal of the overworld theme from Dragon Quest I plays overhead. Damn, this gave me the biggest f***ing smile.
Ross, thou art a true hero. I hereby bequeath unto thee that which is our country's highest honor, the Order of Erdrick, bearing witness to your status as a true hero.
And with that, the story of Erdrick is told, and man, what a satisfying conclusion to these games. Again, the story isn't really a story. I really thought we were going to have something with that killer opening, but after that, Ortega and the hero's backstory are almost completely forgotten about. We get the smallest of nuggets. I'm talking the little crumblies at the bottom of the bag of frozen chicken nuggets worth of Ortega backstory in the village of Muir. The party rolls up to this town and everyone keeps calling the hero Papa Godaro. Apparently, they look very similar. This makes no sense, all until you find this woman who says that this Papa Godaro lived here a long time ago and went by another name before he left for the castle of Aliahan, Ortega. You can pick up on a few tidbits like he regrets leaving his son in Aliahan, but other than that, we have no character development. The 3 party members are the very definition of blank slate. They have their class, that's what they do during battle, but as far as the story goes, they contribute nary a peep. Gotta say, having protagonists that don't have any personality whatsoever is wearing a little thin. I'm ready to see my protagonists go on an actual journey that changes them for the better, while also going on a world-hopping adventure that puts them face to face with all sorts of challenges. We have these short stories that give us a glimpse into these small villages, but seldom do these give any insight into the world and how things operate. I mean, it's because there isn't anything to know besides the bad guys are jerks and it'd be dope if you could stop them. I still really enjoyed the world and the people in it. That still entertained me most of the way through. After going on a journey to return a crown to the king of Romali, he pretty much replies with, "Dude, you're obviously way better than me. Why don't you be the king instead?" And that's exactly what happens. The hero literally becomes a king and walks around talking to all of his subjects as they glaze him up. All until you find the old king in the fighting arena gambling on monster fights. You can even find the king's father above the throne room and he says,
"He crowned you? What a joke. He's still up to his old tricks."
tricks.
Implying that this king is a bit of a f*** up and this situation isn't special. This fortune teller in the town of Oseram took the hero upstairs alone for a fortune reading.
Look into the crystal. Look deeply.
Yes, everything is getting clearer. Clearer. I can't believe it.
Nice crystal ball, eh? I operate the slideshow underneath.
Ugh, Dad! You gave it away again!
I couldn't resist.
After explaining how the world is now in trouble due to the appearance of Zoma, the king of Aliahan goes, I'm tired now. Again, the story was fine, good even, when measuring the quality of the episodes that were treated to. I'm just ready for a story with real characters that go on a connected, meaningful journey. When Dragon Quest III is brought up in conversation, the story is not what's given praise. Everyone loves this game because of the changes it brought to Dragon Quest battles and character progression. When on the topic of combat, Nakamura really wanted the player to enjoy the process of fighting this time around. He lamented that in the previous games, battles were kinda boring, but having to fight battles in order to get stronger was part of how you proceeded through the game. Many steps were taken to alleviate the monotony of battles in 3, with the goal being the players actually having a good time, and personally, I think they did a bang-up job. For the first time in the series, you're able to choose what class your party members will be, allowing you to craft unique teams that you have total control over. After the king of Aliahan says to go make some friends at the Jack-in-the-Box down the street, you're given the option to recruit a few pre-made characters into your party. Nothing against Elucidius the Wizard or Brendar the Soldier, but I'm trying to have a larger selection. The second floor of this Taco Bell allows you to register your own created companions. This is where you're able to name a brand new hero and select what class they'll have. Warriors are your weapon-focused powerhouse, able to equip most weapons and armor, some even more effective than the main character. I just wouldn't expect them to take their turn first or cast any spells, but all they need is that weapon and the attack button. The wizard, on the other hand, is great at casting spells, quickly gaining access to a few powerful group targeting moves. They just don't last long if they're the target of enemy attacks. They can't wear super protective armor or use weapons that'll pack a physical punch. That never stopped the fighter though. This class actually does better with fewer weapons and armor equipped. This martial artist has the highest agility stat, which guarantees they'll be one of the first ones to act. Pilgrim is the closest thing we have to a dedicated healer, but interestingly, they also have a decently high strength stat and the ability to equip strong weapons and armor. But the Pilgrim can also eventually learn powerful offensive spells too. A very versatile class indeed. The Merchant is an interesting case. After battles, they increase the gold you're rewarded, along with being able to appraise items right then and there if you're interested in selling something. But my thing is, merchants you can sell to will tell you how much the item is worth before you sell it anyway. I didn't see the allure of this class. There's also the goof off. So quoting the manual here, without exaggeration, a useless living being to take along in your quest. Apparently their luck stat is pretty high, so that might be interesting, but my fighter has a pretty decent luck stat already, so I'd say it's only worth it for a challenge run. And finally, there is the player's character or hero. He's pretty much got the capability to equip almost any weapon or armor like a soldier, as well as the ability to learn some powerful magic. Healing spells to assist the pilgrim with emergency fix-ups, even some spells that the wizard is unable to learn, like the lightning spell towards endgame. There's a reason he's the main character. As you can see, stats are far more of a focus in Dragon Quest III. Damage types scale based on how high a character's stats are, meaning that a character's physical attacks will improve with how high their level and therefore their strength stat gets. Same thing in regards to a wizard's spell damage scaling with intelligence as well. Like a lot of things, these stats have been in the background of the series for a while, but now that we have the ability to shape a unique party, picking what stats and weaknesses to cover depending on what classes come along for the ride, it's far more important to pay attention to. Finding the niches that your characters are proficient in and pushing them further into those roles is a lot of fun. We've seen them in both remakes we've looked at, but for the first time in the main line, we have permanent stat increasing items like strength seeds, intelligence seeds, acorns of life, and so on and so forth. It's why for my fighter Hunk, I fed him every speed and luck seed I found. I noticed that he would get critical strikes even in the early game, so I juiced that up as much as I reasonably could. And not having to buy another weapon for a physical fighter saved me a lot of cash. Hitting first and with a critical hit made Hunk a great party member. Then we have my pilgrim Philip. This guy was probably my most valued asset, but mainly because he's the one that kept the party healed up. Not for nothing, he could dish out the damage when everyone was already in good shape though. He can equip some great weapons and crank out some juicy physical damage when not on healing duty. And after some level ups, he can come into offensive magic like Infernus that still targets enemy groups. Plus it's next level Infernmost, which can wipe out enemy groups like nothing else. Group spells are still my shit. dude. The defeat spell makes a return, and it's a lifesaver when an annoying bunch of enemies jumps out and you really just don't want to deal with them. It makes a huge difference not getting this spell at the literal last hour of the game. Food for thought, Dragon Quest II. Who said that? Status effect magic has probably seen the largest boost in effectiveness though. In the last game, there was no point in putting enemies to sleep or anything like that because of how quickly battles were over. And boss enemies, more often than not, simply weren't affected by these spells. But in 3, Philip would keep enemies asleep while all the other party members jumped them like the helpless sap they are. This boss fight against the thief Kandar and his lackeys was probably supposed to be pretty tough. But Phil kept everyone snoozing, which made it pretty easy. Increasing the speed of my party so they can have their turn faster, slowing the enemies to push their turn back. The only issue was when Philip was the target. Pilgrims don't have the best armor in the early game, so I started feeding every item that increases max HP to Philip to push him further into the role of a tank healer. My sturdy little band-aid boy. Then there's my wizard, Lapis. She was always great at dishing out lots of powerful magic. Until Philip learned Infernus at level 12, Lapis had the only multi-targeting move with Bang. This would hit every enemy in the battle, regardless of groups. But for high single target damage, she could throw out Ice Bolt in the early game, which wasn't bad or anything, but towards late game, she had some really awesome spells. Firebane returns as a devastating group spell along with Snowstorm. Enemies seemingly have elemental weaknesses this time around. I can't be sure, but the ice balls when going through Baramos' cave went down like dominoes when I used the spell Firebolt, a late game group targeting fire spell. And these Darth Bears in the Dark World near Ramaldar seem to take increased damage from Snowstorm. One of the more unique spells Lapis learned though was Bee Dragon, which couldn't be more literal. She transforms into a dragon and breathes powerful fire on every enemy in the fight. The biggest trade-off is that she can no longer select an action each turn. She becomes a bit of a berserker and will automatically blow fire every turn until the fight is over or she dies. It's a great spell, but in some fights it's just best for Lapis to cast Increase every turn, which will up the party's defense. My physical fighters don't have much to worry about when the boss can only land a point or two of damage per turn, or even the Buy Kill spell, which dramatically increases an ally's physical attack. Casting this on the hero and Hunk was what won me the fight against Zoma. And speaking of, we have the hero. Again, he's not too complex, easily the hardest physical attacker on my squad, only exacerbated by me feeding him all the strength seeds we find. Hero can roll with the best of them from the start of the adventure right up until the end. He has the capacity to sling some spells, but it was not my focus for this playthrough. In this aspect, I guess it's easy to make the comparison again to the hero from Dragon Quest I. That guy could hit like a truck and also learn some spells that, yeah, were pretty useless, but he had that dual utility. In DQ3 though, I just wanted another little man who could beat shit with a stick. He was essentially my warrior stand-in that got some very useful healing spells later on in the adventure. As for Hero's offensive magic, there were a few good ones, but we'll check back in on this in a bit. Keeping everyone stocked up with the best equipment is still a big part of keeping your party up to code. Gaining gold from battles is just as important as experience because it can be used to buy better armor and weapons for your warriors. The same inventory concerns are still present in the third game, however, and in some ways, they're worse. Since the adventure is so much larger, we'll be getting a lot more key items that all take a slot. There are 8 more slots thanks to having a 4th party member, but those extra slots will fill up fast because of the sheer size of the adventure and the stuff you have to carry. The 7 mystical orbs that you have to collect are all physical items that have to sit in someone's inventory. Periodically, I made trips to the shrine just to drop off the orbs I've collected just so I have more room in my bag. The transferring of items to other party members to make sure we have enough room to hold our weapons or maybe try on a new piece of equipment is still very prevalent. I can only imagine the look on the merchant's face when these 4 people just start trading and trying on each other's clothes in the middle of the town. But it's in your best interest to keep a few of these slots open at all times. Enemies can drop those stat enhancing items, but they won't drop if you don't have any slots open. It's not the end of the world, it's just the limited inventory is still one of the few things that feels like an unfortunate product of its time. Or maybe they really thought it added to the immersion of the adventure. Personally, I think it can't be thrown out fast enough. And another correction from the previous video. I stated there isn't a way to sell items that you don't need, which increases menu usage by having to trade and discard stuff. Reddit user R692 informed me that you can sell items, armor, and weapons, but not at weapon shops. If you talk to the general store, they have a sell command. Thanks for the heads up, dude. But yeah, so the same thing applies in Dragon Quest III. Item vendors will take any item that's not a key item. They often don't sell for much, to be honest, but if I'm in the middle of a dungeon and I need to drop something to pick up a more important key item, I don't feel bad for just discarding some stuff. But that's just just another reminder of this being a blind playthrough of these games. If I get something wrong, don't hesitate to call me out and let me know. But how about that combat system, huh? The change to a totally player-dictated party does so much for battles. In the other games you had a set party, and by 2 it was neat that we had some semblances of classes with Artho and Varia, but these classes create so many interesting choices for the player. You can have a super balanced team of a pilgrim, a mage, and a warrior, but there's also nothing stopping you from making a team of 3 pilgrims that will never be out of heals, but you might be lacking on damage at some point. 3 soldiers that'll hit like a truck, but your cash will be spent on medicinal herbs, expensive armor and weapons, and the hero is the only one able to capitalize on magic weaknesses. But I adore that we have that choice. With the new focus on stats and a created party, all of the growth is totally influenced by you. I love this battle system, and it makes me excited for my next playthrough because, yeah, I want to see how the other classes fare. But there is a bit of an elephant in the room regarding the battle system that I do regret not interacting with, and that's the class switching. By sailing to the Shrine of Dhamma, people are able to change who they are. People travel from all over to use this shrine's power.
I want to be a girl!
But more importantly, this goes for your characters, as they can all change their classes. If you choose to do so, the character will start their new class at level 1, but their current stats will be halved, meaning that they keep half of their progression and all their spells from their previous job, making the level ups they gain in their new job bolster the already high stats for a now level 1 character. Maybe you have a warrior class who has a high strength stat, but your party keeps getting their ass kicked. We'll switch that warrior to a pilgrim and you have a healer that can deal damage numbers close to a warrior. Most importantly, you can change a pilgrim or a wizard into the best class in the game. If either of these classes have reached level 20 and you found the Book of Satori, you can swap to the secret sage class. I ended up not partaking in multi-classing because I was worried about the lower stats and didn't quite understand the whole thing until I looked up more information after I had already finished the game. I will definitely be sure to check out multi-classing on my next playthrough. The grind is still a part of the game, but it's been significantly reduced. Dragon Quest III has a drastically smoothed out difficulty curve. You have the option to stay right outside the towns to grind levels and create a nice little experience buffer for your team. But in my findings, the experience gain rate increases at such a steady rate for the new, stronger monsters as you encounter them that I felt grinding the same enemies had diminishing returns shortly after encountering them. It was much more effective to just progress through the new areas, to fight the new enemies, to get the higher amounts of experience they reward. It all seemed to even out when I did it that way, while also keeping the adventure moving along at the same time. I never found myself getting damage checked at any point. The pace in Dragon Quest III is so much better than its predecessors. The only time I kind of felt the need to grind was towards the end of the game in the World of Darkness. When you get down here, everything wants you dead, with enemies being the toughest you've faced by a long shot. They can still usually be taken out in a few turns, but in true Dragon Quest fashion, it's those little hits they get that can wear your party down over time. And with how long and confusing the late game expeditions are, this can spell trouble. And while I appreciate how effective the Pilgrim is as a healer, the menu usage has been dramatically increased. Everyone needs to be close to full health while going through a new dungeon, because you have no idea when a new monster will surprise you with something that takes out a party member, if not more. So this means I went into the menu after almost every battle, selected spell, scrolled down to fill up, then selected the appropriate heal spell so I don't waste any NP over healing someone, then likely opening up the menu again to do it again for everyone else. At level 34, the Pilgrim does learn Heal Us, which is the series' first group heal, granting everyone 50 HP, but it also costs 18 MP, which is a good bit, and it's likely that not everyone needs 50 HP. Same thing goes for the hero when he learns Heal Us All at level 38. It does exactly what you'd think it does, but for 62 MP. It should only be used for emergencies during battle, in my experience. People often gave games like Ocarina of Time a truckload of shit for how often you have to open the menu to swap items, but the Dragon Quest healing minigame is so much more frequent. Hopefully this will be worked out in the series sooner rather than later. The only thing that feels truly archaic regarding combat is when the character will swing at nothing after an enemy dies. If you've set all 4 party members to attack the toughest monster in the fight, but the first attack ends up killing the monster, then all your other motherfuckers will swing at thin air, just hitting them with the Yep. stupid. This happens so often, and yes, more than likely, I just need to get better at managing my attacks and not unloading the whole clip on one dude, because yeah, this has technically been an issue since the previous game, but it wasn't as prevalent because 2 of the 3 party members were often using target all spells. But speaking of the new enemies, Nakamura said this was also another concern of the teams going into the 3rd game. He aimed to create enemies of all types that were both smart and stupid, monsters that would wisely use their magic and attacks to impede the party in interesting ways. I felt it too. This game introduces the lineup mechanic. Your first character is more likely to be attacked as well as be more effective with physical attacks. And it's more effective to put wizards in the 4th position because they use ranged attacks and can't take as much punishment. They're closer to or further from enemies, in other words. This is supposed to mean that your 3rd and 4th slots are safer than the ones in the 1st and 2nd slots. But I didn't see that in my time with the game. Some enemies will attack wildly, sure, but then there were also some enemy ambushes that would target a specific character regardless of their position, taking them from perfectly fine to perfectly knocking their head off their fucking body. I feel like poor Philip was targeted more than he deserved, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised if the smart monsters, as Nakamura pointed out, target healers specifically. It did help to keep me on my toes, but damn. Some strategies were taken from the previous game, like these Catchulas and their dance that steals MP from the party, similar to the Mudmen from 2. But there are actually multiple enemies that can do this now, so it's best to target those monsters specifically. These slime snails could cast a party-wide sleep spell and put everyone to sleep at once. And just like that, I die. It doesn't happen often, but it also doesn't seem super fair when it does. Shadow enemies make a return and can cast defeat on the party. It has a low chance, but even a low chance of immediately killing my healer works sometimes. This was also smack dab in the middle of a dungeon. I would have been so screwed if it hadn't been for the returning Leaves of the World Tree items. The Condor enemies? Ugh. Choke on one and die, ass. These things aren't usually a problem, but there is a small chance they can cast Limbo on a party member. It happened to Lapis, and just like that, she was banished. I was honestly freaking out. She wasn't dead, I couldn't simply revive her or anything. She wasn't in the party at all. I went to rest in an inn, but that didn't bring her back either. The only thing I could think to do was go back to Aliahan and see if she went back to the tavern. The return spell is such a game changer here because of the need to jump between the different locations so much, but that's exactly what happened, thankfully, so I just had to add her back to the party. It was just a speed bump as far as the overall game went, but I was scared out of my mind for a second. These status effects and death spells are so much more common than the previous entries, they can be really debilitating to your party, stopping your progress in a dungeon pretty suddenly when they hit. I would be calling them unfair if it weren't for the fact that your party can throw it right back at the opposition. We talked about the buffs and debuffs to stats, but Lapis has the Rob Magic spell, allowing her to steal a few magic points from the enemies in fights. It had a low chance of actually working, but keeping her MP up by siphoning it from the enemies kept me out in the field longer. Lapis also had Chaos, which would confuse enemies and have them potentially hit other monsters. Philip had the sleep and defeat spells. It all feels incredibly balanced. So much so that boss fights were actually highlights. They all require strategy to overcome, which is really satisfying when you finally crack the code. Metal slimes appear at a good pace, I would say. I found them every so often in the early game, with their appearances ramping up as I progressed. Their defense values seem to be back in check. The hero can no longer crack a metal slime and do any more than one single damage as God intended. They were a lot tougher to pin down this time. They seem to run away more frequently. They would occasionally stick around long enough to die by normal means, but the preferred way to beat them was with a critical hit, which still ignores the defense stat. Another reason why Hunk's speed and luck was essential. Every so often he would catch them before they escape, and man, it feels incredible to see a metal slime go down. Same goes for the returning metal babbles. Hunk became so important for the late game. So I mentioned how I needed to grind for a bit in the Dark World, right? Well, I found this patch of dirt close to Remoldar that seemed to have a far more consistent metal babble spawn rate. So I just hung around there and let Hunk score his crits, awarding me a cool 13,400 experience per metal babble. But I like seeing the smaller secrets the world has to offer. In the previous video, I complained that Dragon Quest II's world is too spread out, which led to a frustrating amount of back and forth, and an overload of information with near limitless ways in which that information might be used. This was overkill because the world became so open so quickly. Dragon Quest III keeps the player on rails way more successfully. The game is deliciously linear for a long while. In the beginning, you literally have maybe 2 or 3 options on where your party can even walk. Later, you gain access to a bow, but you're still given constant instructions that point you where you need to go and give you hints on what you should be looking for. This ensures that the scaling of the enemies and the player stays smooth. It makes sure that the player never has too many places where they can apply the information they've been gathering, because the sizes of the towns are still pretty condensed and you gather the same amount of information. But when you only have 2 or 3 locations to search, you're bound to find the solution and then move on to the next location. I can't overstress how comfortable it is. I was so surprised with how smoothly the game moves the player through the world without the need of a guide. The elves' secret village was a little hidden, but not as bad as it could have been. You hear from several NPCs that it's to the west of No Annuals, but I kept searching through that cave that got me the Dream Ruby. It always stole my attention when I got close to the west side of the island, but after looking closer, you can totally see that one of these tiles is not like the other, and boom, one secret village. The readability of the overworld and nudging the player in the right direction is much improved over the previous entries. I will admit that I did find myself at a loss on what to do once or twice, but I remembered my time with 2 and how the manual helped me when I needed some extra info. And to my surprise, Dragon Quest III's manual comes with a walkthrough, but it wasn't as hand-holdy as a typical walkthrough. It's this interesting cross between a step-by-step guide and an informational pamphlet of the world. I realize it kind of flies in the face of me not wanting to use guides, but it really helped me pick up on things that I would not have found if I was just playing on my own. I also don't want to give the wrong impression. I was still able to navigate myself around the world and solve the vast majority of the problems that were presented to me without the use of the manual. It was just an every so often occurrence. I really resonated with what Chrono the Mute pointed out in the last video. The second game can be seen as an escalation from the first as far as the overworld hints go. There were moments where you would need to walk through walls that looked no different than any other tile in DQ1, so you should know to do it in DQ2. That makes sense, and I appreciate the comment, but I still think that's bad design. Even if there's information that I missed, which might have given more hints on obscure items, I think it's okay to say that an old game being old is perfectly fine. There's a reason hints and objectives are made more digestible as the years go on, but I think that logic carries from the other 2 games into 3 just the same. There were plenty of times where I thought back to my time in the last 2 games and it actually saved the day. The manual was one thing, but if I hadn't played the previous games and known that these guys like to hide things out of sight, the dungeon close to Baharada might have given me a lot more trouble. You learn that thieves, guess which ones, have kidnapped this guy's granddaughter, but her boyfriend has chased after them to get her back. The dungeon itself is pretty big and filled with those Catula enemies that leech your mana, so it's tough to stay in here and explore the whole place. Plus, it's set up like a grid, so it's confusing to tell what part of the dungeon you're in. I had checked every corner of this place before running into the boyfriend.
I saw a man go south, right into a wall of darkness. Then, from out of that darkness, I heard a sound like a key turning in a lock.
They've pulled that trick a few times in places like Hargon's Castle, so I gave it a shot, and it worked. The Dragon Quest I fan game I looked at, Remix Plus, I had no idea just how much that dev loved Dragon Quest III. This rock-pushing puzzle was copied word for word from Eginbear Castle and put into the Pyramid Dungeon, which, by the way, was also basically lifted from this game too, even down to the crumbling floors and pressing one of the buttons on the walls to unlock doors. After stopping this doppelganger king in the Kingdom of Samino, the real king gifts me with the Staff of Change. I take the Staff of Change to this old man on a frozen island and he gifts me with the Sailor's Thigh Bone. When you use this item, it gives you coordinates to something in the overworld, just like the Gwaelin's Love item in the first game. It leads you to a pirate ship that I recognized as a post-game dungeon in Remix Plus, but it's how you get the Locket of Love in 3. The animal suit that transforms any party member that wears it into a cat is obtained in the Minoza Cave, similar to how it's found in a post-game tower in Remix Plus. Looking back, it's just so funny how much that fan game took from Dragon Quest III specifically. I remembered searching on the bottom of that whirlpool tile in the last game, so I had a bit of a habit searching the bottom of objects more frequently here. And man, did it pay off when I searched underneath this well, because it gives me the Thunder Staff, which was the best staff for Varia in the last game. And then there's all the small callbacks when in the World of Darkness. The highlight for me was easily seeing the town of Hawkness in its prime. In all of the other many variations we've seen, we've only ever seen this place as a pile of rubble with a few trees. But getting a glimpse of it doing perfectly fine before the Dragon Lord comes and murders everyone is cool, but also it's a little depressing seeing these people and knowing what happens. Visually, the game looks good, but I note the same kind of improvements going from the first game to the second. The opening with Ortega battling that dragon monster and falling into the World of Darkness is really cool, but that's the last time we get to see a genuine cutscene like that. There are moments where you'll use a key item and the world will shift and something will happen, but these moments were also in 2. In 3, the new monster sprites have become even more detailed, per tradition. Highlights for me are the Putre pups and how they have that one droopy eyeball.
Oh, no, you're cute. You're cute. I don't want to pet you, though.
We got a few of the series staple monster designs in this game. The shadow enemies that cast defeat on the party no longer look like thumb-thumbs that are engulfed in flames. They're now these thin, incorporeal ghost creatures. The Murzon are these intimidating fish people. These Greek statues called stone hulks. These wrinkly walking poop emojis with canes are called lumpus, and they make their debut here. And need I say anything about the trolls? Similar to the Cyclops from 2, this is simply another iconic Dragon Quest monster. The wild apes and all of its variants are just, I mean, come on. If you have the same flavor of autism as I do, you hear Frieza in your head right now.
Hello, monkeys!
I know you do. I do. But I think my favorite new monster design, personally, is the Scalgon. It's just something about the detail and the pose. These guys look awesome. Music-wise, I might get some flack for this, but I didn't love this soundtrack as much as 2's. There are still some great tunes, like the town theme is nice and cheery. The tower/dungeon theme is okay. I didn't get deathly sick of the battle theme, I guess. I did like it. I shouldn't say that. I don't know if I'm in the minority here, but yeah, the music just didn't sound as bouncy as last time. Definitely not bad, but nothing that I'll be hunting down remixes or covers for on YouTube. While Dragon Quest III is a massive step forward for the series with battles that have never been more engaging, the chance to create your own party alone invites so much replayability. It was unheard of for an RPG released in the late 80s. But with all of that being said, I still don't see a reason for you to play this version today. The battles are fun, but besides magic, the classes don't have all that much that make them unique. You can find new weapons for your physical fighters, and that's fun to an extent, but there are no other customization options besides making their numbers go up by equipping that gear. The seeds really do a lot of heavy lifting, seriously. Being able to push a character's stats further and further in the direction you're aiming for is so rewarding, because you really do see a difference, but at the end of the day, it kinda stops there on the original NES version. Instead, there's another version you should play that does everything better and then some. Oh, hell yeah. I have yet to play the other remakes on the Super Nintendo or mobile, so I can't speak to the quality of those games, but to hell with all of those other remakes. If you want to get into Dragon Quest, and you're super into the idea of building your party from scratch and planning how they work with each other, then this is the game for you. The HD 2D remake is so much fun to play. Let's start with the visuals because holy I know I talk about how much of a facelift each of these remakes are from the original, but this time it's unreal, literally. This is another one of Square Enix's HD 2D games. They started this with Octopath Traveler back in 2018, where all the environments are gorgeously sculpted 3D with all the modern conveniences like bloom, chromatic abrasion, particle effects, and so on. But the characters, monsters, and NPCs are all high-definition sprites. The dungeons got some of the biggest glow-ups as far as I'm concerned. There might be a different kind of floor to differentiate a cave from a man-made dungeon in the original, but the background always stayed pitch black, making them bleed into each other visually. But now we're very obviously in an underground tunnel, seeing waterfalls overhead and stalactites above us. Or we're obviously in a dungeon with tiling and statues adding decoration to these floors. The overworlds are so detailed and packed with visual effects like dust particles and wind. The lighting engine does a lot of heavy lifting here. It's everywhere too. We have sunlight shining down during the day. When inside any of these towers, you can see light poking into the structures from the outside. One of my favorites is when exploring at night. The lead character in the party will start carrying a lantern, and the way the light plays with the environment just fits so well. And that's before these effects start to interact with the character sprites too. It all looks so great. Do I think the monsters and some of the NPCs could use a few more frames of animation? Yeah, maybe. Some of their actions can look a bit stiff, but maybe that adds to the charm. I just think it would help to look more cohesive with the battle effects, which are another highlight. They're all done with some amazing visual effects. Spells in particular can be over the top and downright apocalyptic. But again, I wish there was at least an option to see our characters perform these actions. When choosing actions, we can see them all, and this does a good job of conveying status conditions for each party member. But I would have loved to see them put their hands forward when performing a spell or swinging their weapon for a physical attack. I just want to see my warriors in action, you know? That armor looks really ineffective, Zori, but that's okay, girl. It's incredible just how much control you have over your party this time around. We've got some appearance options for each class. You can choose a style for their outfit, their hair color, their voice. It's not much, but it really does help to make these characters really feel like your own. Something that this remake just takes and runs with. I thought the growth in the NES version was good, and it is, but they go so much further here. After you've made your character, you get to distribute a few ability points into certain stats. Not only will this give those stats an initial boost, but that stat will get additional points on level up for the remainder of the journey, unless of course their personality changes. Scattered across the world are books.
Yes. Art.
Each of these books will change a character's personality. These personalities will influence how a character grows. There's a whole chart I found online that goes into detail on what personalities do for each stat, but depending on what stat you want a character to focus on, you'll have them read a book and then their stats will grow based on that personality's growth rate. I want my warrior to be focused on strength and defense, so I let her become a paragon. My hero is going to be magic focused, so I found a book called The Eureka Moment, which makes him a genius. This will see his strength stat growing really slowly, but his wisdom will skyrocket. Well, it would have if I had been paying attention to my accessories. Each character can have 2 accessories equipped. These can do things like give boost to stats or make you less susceptible to status effects or other passive effects. But you have to be sure that a helpful accessory doesn't force your character to become a less than desirable personality and up your stat growth. I did this to my hero when I equipped the 10-ton toupee, which changes his personality to Mule, a personality which heavily stunts growth for every stat except for his vitality. I am an idiot, and it took me way too long to realize this. And it's a cursed item too, which means I can't just take it off. I have to receive benediction from a priest. But after that, I leveled up with the genius personality for my hero and my sage, and I started to notice a difference for sure. You'll have to forgive me if any of these mechanics are brought back from future Dragon Quest entries. This is my first time seeing them and learning about them. Thankfully, the remake showers you with seeds for stat growth. So every wisdom seed I got went to the hero, who eventually got some great offensive magic. Every strength seed went to my warrior for huge single target physical damage. And then every luck seed went to my character that was focused on group damage thanks to the new boomerang weapons. I was so excited whenever I first saw the boomerang. I know about these from my time with Dragon Quest 11 and 8, but essentially they're equipable by certain classes and will hit every enemy in the battle. Whips are also introduced, but they only allow attacking a group of enemies. Pairing that boomerang with a high luck stat, the goal was to score critical hits on as many enemies as possible. And it's no longer just attack and spells, vocations have been given a lot more to play with. This includes the hero. I may not have given much thought to his magic in the NES version, but the hero can be a pretty effective mage, learning the Sizz lineup of spells faster than the dedicated wizard class. The damage of the final spell, Ka-Sizz, was incredible too, but it was honestly nothing when compared to the Kazap spell. Philip learned a lot of great new spells as the Sage, like the all-targeting big hitters like Ka-Crackle and Ka-Swoosh. Both look incredible and are great at outputting damage of a specific type, but again, I don't think there is a spell that was more devastating than Kazap. Towards the end of the game, and especially in the post-game dungeons, most battles would be decided the moment the hero took his turn and unleashed Judgment. So I did have to play a bit of catch-up by increasing his speed to assure he gets Kazap off before he dies. Because those post-game dungeons, man, God, they'll kick your ass. If I had to do it over, I would probably make a strength build, but let it be known that the hero can sling some magic. But it's not just the hero that has expanded use. Every class is now able to learn and use abilities. These are unique attacks that use MP, but are not spells. The fighter or martial artist now has a list of moves that it can pull out. Something like Flying Knee, which can deal extra damage to flying enemies. The warrior and thief both get moves that have a chance to instantly kill kill any basic monster it hits, which also works on metal and liquid metal slimes, you dig? The merchant eventually gets a great skill in Helicopter, allowing a mainly physical fighter to attack a group of enemies without needing a boomerang or whip. And using this move, Zori could knock shit on its ass. But the merchant really doesn't have much to contribute beyond that, and maybe some extra money after a fight. I had hoped you'd be better, my prince, but I suppose you need more time. Maybe in a future game. But by far, the coolest class is the newcomer, the Monster Wrangler. So you'll notice these odd-looking formations of rock and trees on the overworld. These are little safe havens that can sometimes house treasure or extra loot, but they also occasionally house friendly monsters. By approaching the monster and telling them about the monster's safe haven, they'll escape to go live a better life. Most of these guys can just be approached and then the cutscene will initiate and they'll go, but some of them are also skittish and require a different strategy. But anyway, every 10 monsters or so you rescue, the Monster Wrangler will gain new skills that scales based on how many monsters you've rescued, and these attacks are great. Most of them are multi-hit attacks that target the enemies on the field randomly, but in say boss fights, when there's only one enemy in the fight, all those hits target the one enemy. It can be very effective, but all of these great skills mean nothing on their own. This is where I really dipped into class changing. My party was initially my warrior Zori, you've been introduced, my monster wrangler Lorraine, and Philip reprises his role as my pilgrim or priest in this game. Then around the mid-20s, I made my way to the Shrine of Dama, or All Trades Abbey in the remake. Also, can any of the Dragon Quest veterans in the obvious tell me why all of the vocations, town names, locations all changed their names between the original release and the remakes? It's been happening since the first game in its remake, and I just really want to get to the bottom of it. And they give you access to it much earlier than the NES version does. You no longer need the ship to sail up the canal to get to the shrine, you simply walk across this new piece of connecting land from the town of Barroga. But class changing is so cool! I really wish I would have taken advantage of it in the NES version now. Check it out. When swapping Zori to the Merchant and Philip to Sage, after the first battle they fought, they immediately shot up to level 7. The stats might have been low to begin with, but after a while, they easily surpass the stats of the characters that haven't changed vocations. Plus, they get to keep the abilities they learned from each class. I later swapped Zori to a martial artist so she'll learn some skills there too, but I liked the look of the female warrior more, couldn't tell you why, so I eventually swapped her back with some awesome skills from the merchant and the martial artist with that astronomical strength stat. Same thing with Lorraine. I swapped her to thief until she hit around level 30 to get skills like the instant kill move and status effect skills like sleepy slap that can potentially put enemies to sleep. And again, Lorraine grew exponentially after the first fight. And that's just a regular battle. The Shrine of Transcendence is right behind All Trades Abbey, and on the 4th floor, you can encounter metal slimes, giving characters an easy way to grind levels after changing classes. If you really want to, there is nothing stopping you from taking every one of your characters through all of the classes to get every ability and spell in the game. It'll take a while, but thanks to some reliable liquid metal slime locations, you'll be there before long. I gotta tell you, if growing a unique party of characters and finding optimal combinations of class abilities is what you look for in an RPG, then I really think you'll find a lot to enjoy here. The character growth in this remake is fantastic. It and the visuals are easily the standout features of the HD 2D remake. There are other notable things like the voice acting for many of the main characters. It's good, and I really do appreciate them putting so much effort into this story. They didn't have to hire actors to portray 2D sprites, but they did, and I like that. Especially when you get the odd standout like Robin Hood. This was the thief Kandar in the NES version, but I think the character becomes more of a frequent flyer throughout the series under this new name.
Hey? I don't remember kidnapping no... Hang about. Not you, a bleeding king. I can't get rid of you, can I? Well, you ain't gonna beat me twice.
I also still really appreciate how entertaining these random interactions with NPCs are, like this undead skeleton who asked me a very serious question.
Who dares disturb my slumber? Was it you?
Yes.
And was it you who plundered the treasure chest before me?
Yes.
Gosh, you're very honest, aren't you? Jolly good. Well, don't let me keep you.
There are small additions, like the player being visited by the spirit of Rubus in their dreams before visiting the World of Darkness. Ortega is given some more backstory. Things like his time adventuring with his friend Simon, and again, how much he regrets leaving his son and wife behind. The hero story in general is given some added emotion. After Baramos is put down and Zoma makes himself known in the Aliahan throne room, the party takes the night to rest. The hero stays the night at his mother's house, and we see that she's actually really worried about her son.
I just don't want to lose you too. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't worry. Everything will be all right.
All of this really puts some shoulder behind the gut punch of Ortega's final goodbye. It's made crystal clear that when he fell down to the World of Darkness, he got a big case of the plot amnesias. In the NES version, the time frame of when he went down to the World of Darkness and how he forgot and how his kid was able to catch up to him almost immediately was a little weird. Maybe an NPC said something, but I never found it, so it always came across as strange. But here, he still conveniently forgot who he was right up until the time when the hero and his party were on his tail. Then he remembers and heads into Zoma's citadel, only to meet his end right as the hero and his party find him.
Should you ever find yourself in Aliahan, look for my child and tell them I said this. I'm sorry. I wanted to make the world a better place. A place where you wouldn't have to be afraid. And I just wish I could have told you that I love you more than you'll ever know.
Also, speaking of Zoma's introduction, it's surprisingly brutal. I would say the voice acting doesn't really give the story any extra depth, it simply gives the characters a bit more color and makes it a more enjoyable watch. But that's to say nothing of the additional game content. Mini medals! I'm really curious when these things first made their debut in the mainline series. But modern Dragon Quest has had these little coins that you can find by searching high and low. By heading down the well in Aliahan, you can redeem the medals for items of increasing value. The friendly monsters I mentioned can be entered into monster arenas throughout the game. This was technically a feature in the NES version, but it was gambling in its purest form. You put money down on a monster, and if they end up winning, you get some extra cash. If not, you lose. And they're certainly better in the remake, but it's not all that exciting. You're unable to control your monster's actions directly. You can change their strategy to make them more reserved or blow all their MP on a huge attack. Later fights do need some consideration in strategy and healing, but it mostly just boils down to finding the highest level monsters and putting 3 of them in the ring. I'm sure this will get fleshed out later in the series, because I know some people love the Dragon Quest Monsters side games. Maybe I'll look at those at some point. There are lots of extra boss fights added, and my god, they kicked my ass. Several of the events that were as simple as walking up to an NPC or location and doing something in the original now has one of Baramos's minions spawning and challenging the party to a tough encounter. In the village of Tindaki, you unlock the cell, and this dead guy gives you an orb in the NES version. Done and done. But in the remake, you have to fight against these undead spirits that can mess your party up with all sorts of status effects, potentially whacking your party members with an instant kill. And the worst part, they will continue to call for new monsters to be added to the battle. If you're unable to kill them as fast as they're called for, you will struggle like I did. Lots of group targeting and all targeting moves like boulder toss and boom were used to pull the win out. When attempting to throw the mountain cleaver into Necrogond, a monster, which I actually take as the monster from the opening cutscene on the NES, stops you. But this thing, Garboil, such a tough fight. It was partially my fault because I had just swapped vocations before coming this way, so I had some comparatively weak characters, but even still, Garboil takes no prisoners. He'll attack the entire group with Boom, Inferno, and worst of all, the devastating Kasiz spell. He'll even power up after taking enough damage, giving his attacks an even greater boost. I would make sure to have Philip cast his magic barrier and Kabuff on the party to increase our chances of surviving an onslaught of 3 attacks per turn, but it got to the point where I couldn't out-heal the damage while also trying to fight, so I would just Ka-Clang when he powers up. This turns the party to metal for a few turns, but they can no longer take actions. It was long enough for his power-up to subside, and for me to buff up Zori so she could deal some big damage numbers thanks to Double Edge Slice. a move that does double damage but while also hurting her too. But it worked and he went down. There's a rematch with Baramos after you get to the top of Rubus's tower in the World of Darkness, and plenty of post-game stuff that I'll touch on in just a moment. The regular enemy encounters are pretty similar to what was in the original. The Limbo spell, now called Blasto, only lasts until that battle is finished. Thank God there's no more need to go back to the Olive Garden and Aliahan to get them back in the party. The damn Thwack spell is just as annoying though, and I fear it won't be getting any better anytime soon. But the remake does go above and beyond to make moments as annoying as your party getting insta-killed a little less annoying. There are the obvious ones like party members having enough brain to attack another enemy if their target dies before they attack them. This cannot come to the main line soon enough. I mentioned how having to go back to the menu after every battle and heal up the party became very old very quickly in the NES version. Well, in the remake, there is a handy heal all button. Open the menu with triangle, hold down the button again, and the game will efficiently heal your entire party in an instant.
I'm gonna cry. I'm crying.
This still doesn't mean that using Zing on a party member will, allow them to get up. Damn it! Using Return in the NES version has a lot of options on where you can warp to. Because of the world hopping nature of the campaign, all of the major villages and cities can be warped to at any time. It's awesome. The remake said hold my beer and allows you to warp to literally any location on the map. Dungeon entrances, major shrines, smaller landmarks within larger towns. Baramos' castle literally has a beam of light right before you fight the main man, just in case you need to head back to a town before the fight. And this beam of light shows up at the beginning too, so you can warp right back to Baramos and skip his entire dungeon on repeat visits. And Zoma's castle has the same thing.
Holy mother of God!
You can comfortably go from anywhere to just about anywhere else in an instant. Remember how in the first game I was scared that death would require me to reload a save and I would lose all of my progress in between there and my last save? Turned out permanently losing half of your money is way worse than just reloading a few minutes of game time, but here in the remake, we have the best of both worlds. You have the option to reload from your last save, reload the last quick save, which is typically right before you initiated the boss fight, or my favorite, retry the boss fight instantly. It's so convenient to go into the boss, recognize the strategy as you lose, and then go back in and apply the strat to win. There's now a dedicated run button in the overworld so you can speed through the environments. Bless you for this, Square Enix. I didn't mention the key economy when talking about the NES version because it's pretty straightforward. You get the keys linearly as you progress through the game. So the collection of the keys is the best it's ever been. Having to still go into your inventory and select the key to open the door is lame, but another point for Dragon Quest III, keys stack in power. You can use the final key on any door in the game to open it. I wish we could discard the keys that we no longer need instead of having to dedicate 2 item slots to keys that serve literally no purpose for 50% of the game, but my therapist has helped me work on these emotions. But who needs therapy when in the HD remake you simply walk through doors to open them? If you have the key that's needed to open it, it'll open. No need to fumble in a menu, the game can just keep moving as the party bulldozes through locked doors now. Battle speed is toggleable after every turn. For boss fights, I typically had it on fast so I could keep up with the actions and status effects, but for any other fight, that was on ultra. Grinding is now a breeze thanks to the ability to speed through these unimportant fights altogether, as well as the game restoring a character's health and MP after a level up, meaning you can stay out in the field as long as the XP stays a-flowing. The game actually starts you out in auto battle, where the game is just picking what commands it should use, which is gross. It should be obvious, but after one turn, I quickly changed that. Some things, like the auto battle, are made to make the game a little more smooth, but there is an argument to be made for the remake smoothing the game's rough edges down too much. A big part of DQ3 is collecting information, talking to NPCs, and writing down what they say in the hope that they'll have a clue on where to go next. Like it or not, this is a big part of how these 3 games have played up until this point. But with this HD remake, there is no ambiguity left. The cutscenes are voiced by NPCs that will tell you exactly where to go to an almost humorous degree.
Sounds like those ruffians are in the tower to the northwest. The one that's just over the mountains.
See, I saw it once when I made the journey to the western coast. It is quite a trek, let me tell you.
maybe my mom wasn't the only skinwalker. Then on top of that, the map is marked with indicators that are constantly pointing you in the right direction. The beginning is pretty linear, yeah, but when you get the ship and the hunt for these orbs is on, the map is covered with markers that are begging you to come check these spots. It's obvious that the challenge is now facing the tough bosses that are certainly more strategically engaging as opposed to deducing the locations of these orbs and how to find them. The sleuthing aspect of the original trilogy is lost in the HD 2D remakes. If that's something that you really valued, then that would be something to consider before jumping in. Maybe these map markers are absent in the Draconian Quest difficulty you can select, but I wouldn't know. For me personally, however, it's no contest. I have said and said that I appreciate these first 3 games. I appreciate that they've paved the way for other, more streamlined RPGs. But with that being said, I am so glad this remake eliminates virtually all of the annoying guesswork. The process of having to play detective just to see the game's world is really starting to drag. It got significantly better in Dragon Quest III when looking at the entire trilogy, but I'm just relieved the remake streamlined the experience in this way. It puts the focus on the excellent combat, the improved exploration, and the stunning visuals. Unless you're a stickler for really old, archaic RPGs, I highly recommend you play the HD 2D remake if you have any interest in seeing the Erdrick saga play out. There's an entire post-game dungeon on top of all the other extra stuff I mentioned earlier too. It's a little weird at first because it's made up of stitched together dungeons from the main game, only with way more difficult monster encounters. You start off by running through a few sections of the Maw of Necrogond, only backwards and some of it's on fire. Then you rerun a section of the Pyramid Dungeon and immediately afterwards end up in a copy of Samino Castle's dungeon, then in a monster arena, then in some palace with a king. It's weird, but it is cool. You'll definitely be facing some of the toughest random encounters in the game. Thwacks, kabuffs, and blastos galore. Plus copies of previous bosses appear as basic encounters, and they're just as tough. But it eventually ends with the battle against Genelon, the wish-granting dragon. I wasn't even close to beating this guy, but I'm okay with that. There are plenty of remake exclusive encounters that give the combat more to chew on if you're the kind of person who is all about finding game-breaking setups. If you're worried about not getting your money's worth here, do not. It is leaps and bounds ahead of any other version. Have fun with the games that are fine-tuned for you to have the most fun with them, and leave the old creaky versions to YouTubers like me who have nothing better to do with their time than document what it's like to play the old stuff.
Your Majesty, fear not, for I will see that thine offspring grows into a fine leader of the land. I promise, nay, I swear, upon my name, the name of Hargon.
But that right there, that's something special. Yuji Hori called Dragon Quest III perfect. Whether or not he was simply speaking this way to inspire sales or confidence in consumers, I don't think I agree. The NES version is really great. It's absolutely the best game in the series so far. But for 2025 standards, especially after what I'm calling the definitive version of the game, there is a lot that still feels like a product of the time. Having to talk with NPCs to interpret their clues is a solid 40% of the gameplay. It has been since the beginning, but with the inclusion of the day-night system, it almost doubles the amount of information that you're exposed to. It's a lot, man, and it's honestly starting to get old. I have done my part in appreciating these NES games and the ways in which they had to structure their games. Dragon Quest III is a major step in the direction of streamlining this process, but it's not quite smooth enough for me to say you need to go out and play this game. The HD 2D remake, though, I think that's something that you should play. It's got the modern convenience of directing the player on exactly where they need to go. Call me a modern young buck gamer if you want to, but I'll be 30 in a few months. months. If I wanted to solve a puzzle, I'd play a puzzle game. Dragon Quest is at its best when I'm exploring the world, finding extra routes and dungeons, and upgrading my party, not talking with 50 NPCs to give me semi-vague directions. The HD 2D remakes, without a doubt, will be the definitive way to play the original Erdrick trilogy. It expands on the original games while also bringing them more into parity with each other. I'm glad I played both versions, but only one of them is a must-play. With that, I close the book on the Erdrick trilogy. I really want to thank my $10 patrons White Ghost 117 and NikkiKoon99. Thank you guys so much for the support. It means the world. And I really appreciate all of you for watching and being excited for these Dragon Quest videos. I really put a lot into them, probably more than I've put into any video in a while. I also really wanted to 100% the 2D HD remake, but the idea of leveling up all those jobs and then beating both super bosses turned me off kind of hard. The point of playing through the remakes was to demonstrate how much they add while still being faithful adaptations of the original works. And I think I've demonstrated that pretty well already, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on. This will be the last time that I play through both an original release and a remake. These games are getting longer, and the remakes are making those games even longer than that. So I think I've done what I need to do by showing off 3 remakes. I am so ready to get off the NES, but we still have one more adventure on the damn system, so let's get ready to jump into a brand new world. Next time in the Dragon Quest retrospective, I take on Dragon Quest IV.